Hello.
Hello.
All right. How's everybody doing today?
Pretty good. I figured out the Postgres, and now just trying to figure out the this HTTP ping on port failed to start error
Mm.
for the triage portal. Yeah. How are you doing?
I just met with my lawyer the first time. Where I got told that congratulations, you have to go back to 2019 and take every single thing that you every single time you talked about Zoom and turn it into a thing that you submit to lawyers.
Report.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like fun.
Yep. Okay, I am looking for the meeting notes for the vulnerability disclosure working group. Curious if we're gonna have anybody else join us. Chris, have we chatted before? I don't know if we've met.
No, I don't think so. I'm mostly just checking out all the different working groups, so just kind of learning what's going on.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right, I am going to what's today's date? The 24th. Okay, Google Docs. I'm gonna mark everybody as not here, and then if you can mark yourself as having attended, that would be lovely. Yeah, let me do myself. Um, Let me just send something to the
Do we have in the notes? I don't see the one for today. Or is that the 17th now?
What? Oh, did I not change the date? I didn't change the date. It's my bad.
Yeah, I just didn't want to like update the wrong one.
Nope, no, I just fixed it.
All right, cool. I love what I'm already on there. Just gotta make myself different color.
Copy the meeting. Okay, all right, let's get into it then. All right, okay, so do we have any new friends? Given that we're, Chris, you're new and we can introduce ourselves. Yeah, do you want to? You don't have to introduce yourself, but if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, so yeah, my name's Chris. I, until about a month and a half ago, worked at Microsoft and was laid off, but I'm actually hoping to be your colleague at some point. So I'm interviewing currently for the technical project manager role. So for OpenSSF. So I'm just kind of checking out what's going on. History-wise, I used to work for the LF. I was actually the executive director for the, jQuery Foundation, then JS Foundation, and then when we merged with Node.js to form OpenJS, I handed that off to Robin, and then went over to Microsoft. So
Cool, welcome.
thanks.
Cool. So my name's Jonathan Leitchu. Yeah, I'll just add you. My name's Jonathan Leitchu. I'm senior software security researcher for the Alpha Omega project. And my shtick has been finding and fixing vulnerabilities at scale across open source, and doing more of that now here at this project. So we're discussing this, continuous work. So Yesenia, you want to give your spiel?
Yeah, I'm Jasenia. I'm on the Alpha Omega project as a senior software security engineer. My goal is to operationalize the Omega toolchain components and essentially automate and scale, Jonathan. If I had to TLDR it, it's automate him.
So, I've been working on a document. Hey, Noah. Hey, Noah, happy to have you.
Hello.
Hello. We're here. We're doing a thing.
Yeah.
All right. No, if you want to add your attendance to the attendance, that'd be, let you attend to us. Do you need the link? Let me send the link. All right. So I spent a bunch of time chewing on this document. I will share this in the chat, and then also, in particular, this page that we're on. Got a license for Lucid Chart. I'm going to screen share. So this is Michael Scovetta proposed an alternative to the disclosure flow we had originally, which was this one over here where I deleted a bunch of stuff. Let's see. This one had it was like something like this. Something like this that we had. The problem that Michael raised with this is that we first open an issue, and then we wait for that issue to get processed for at least 35 days. And then if it's been at least 35 days without the maintainer responding, then we go to this email part. And he was like, why don't we send the email and open an issue at the same time? So this is the flow that I came up with that. So the flow here is a little different. So the problem here is like this draws out the disclosure timeline by making these steps or this process dependent upon this process occurring, which can slow down the disclosure overall. That makes sense? Okay.
Yes.
So scope, what?
No, just saying yes.
Okay. So Michael Scovetta's proposal was we do something like this, where we ask if the repository host supports PVR. If it does, then you use private PMPVR. Sorry. So for those who don't, PMPVR is a pragmatic means of private vulnerability reporting. So for GitHub, this is using GitHub security advisories to report the vulnerability. GitLab apparently lets you like publish vulnerabilities, or you can create a private pull request with GitLab, and like that's just a thing you can do natively. So whatever that is, we do that. If the repository doesn't have PMPVR enabled, then we go through this flow where we have this left branch, which is just continuously looping, and it says if the vulnerability is fixed, if it's not fixed, and 90 days has not elapsed since the process began, and a public PR security fix hasn't been opened, and the repository doesn't have PMPVR enabled, then we just loop. If we have PMPVR enabled, you just report it and then you're done. If the public pull request has been opened, then we end. If 90 days have elapsed since the process began, then we open a public pull request. Then we have this flow over here. So this happens concurrently. So this is two branching. So this loop is occurring whenever and on some basis. At the same time, we look for emails, looking for emails with the disclose check. And then if the repository is issues enabled, and we found an email address, then we go down this route where we do both of these processes at the same time. However, if issues are enabled but emails are not found, then we only do this side. Or if issues are enabled and emails are if issues are not enabled and emails are found, we only do this side. Does that make sense so far?
Graphically,
Yeah.
the only thing that confuses me is that both of them say emails found.
Correct, because you have the conditions on either side of this repository is enabled, because you have one of three conditions, or one of three entry points into this flow on the right.
So it's technically the same step, but it flows differently depending on if
Correct.
it's enabled or not. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. My thought was the same. Why are there two emails found? If it's like we're going there either way, but it's because there's three outputs.
There's three outputs from these three conditions. There are three possible outputs. Or sorry, from these two conditions, right? Because these are the same. There's three possible outputs. Yeah. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
if emails are found and repository issues are enabled, then we go down both of these. These are ORs, just to clarify, these are ORs. And as long as one of these flows reaches these ORs, they are satisfied and you proceed to the blocking point where you're waiting for the other flow. That makes sense? So if we have in the case where issues are enabled, if an existing issue has been opened to request enabling PMPVR, you use the existing issue. If it's not, then you create a new one. If the issue was closed or deleted without a response, then we just go to this OR and then we're blocking on the other side. If the issue has been open for at least 35 days, then we go to this OR and then we're blocking on the other side. Over here, if we have detected an email address, so either this is yes or this is yes, then we send an email with vulnerability details and request that they enable PMPVR, and then we also add we attach the fix with a patch file. If all of the emails bounce, then we just go to this OR. Otherwise, we wait 90 days. After both of these flows have been satisfied, then we check at the end, has the repository enabled PMPVR? If they've enabled PMPVR, then this will cause the private pull request to get opened. Otherwise, we create a public pull request. So what this does is if the emails are like, let's say, for example, the emails are not found, then we have this branch here that satisfies the constraint of this OR over here, unblocking the other side. So it's just flow. It's like just, you know, condition or flowchart flows that unblock the other, like, you know, you're undeadlocking the other deadlock that you're waiting on. Does that make sense? Even though it's slightly convoluted. Basically, both of these things are happening in parallel. That's the high level sort of.
It makes sense to me. Just visually, I had to zoom in on one of my bigger screens. But if we can do something on this little area, just to reduce confusion of like maybe color it with like some words to let them know like this is which condition. And then notifying that it's or just from an outsider viewer coming in and, you know, trying to identify where the lines go. I think that could help at least visually direct it. But as far as the process goes, I see why it was done the way. And nothing major pops out at me right now. Besides that little, but it could be my focus is there for some reason.
I do contains. I can't do equals. I can only do contains. So if I have the word no, but not. Oh, for the love of freaking. It does not. Okay. Does not contain. If it contains the value, yes. Oh, for heaven's sake. What if I do this isn't? Just don't want it to be red. Isn't found. The email isn't found. In this case, issues. That clarify?
Yes. And then maybe these other intersections. I don't know if you see my, yeah.
Well, these are if these are the both are true, so yes and yes.
Okay. Maybe just like a text file just saying true or something. So that's the only thing that I get lost in is trying to figure out which line goes where and which conditions have been met.
Got a note. Text, is there like a
There's like a box or something.
that's no.
But yeah, that's more visually. I'm like I said, I don't know about anything else as far as it flows. I don't know if Chris or Noah have any feedback on that or if it makes sense to them.
I agree with Yesna that midsection does look very complicated. Hearing your description, it sounds like it's necessary complication, but yeah. Oh, right there, that looks better. Like some sort of way to distinguish which lines are going where, because having them all at the same level.
Open it up a little bit more.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
because they cross over in more than one place on the way to the endpoint.
Maybe these two, spread them out a little bit. Yeah, it's just more of helping see where they go. Because it does like intersect with those three, so I keep staring at that one. There you go. Better.
Yeah, so now you can see that if the email is found, it's going, so if the repository issues enabled, and the emails found, yes, goes to the same place as emails found no after repository enabled. Am I seeing that right? That the yes and the no both end up with exist.
Correct. They both go to the same place on the top, but one of the branches goes to satisfying this or,
Yeah.
right?
So each of these trigger kind of like a 3 response. Oh no, this would trigger these 2.
So for this black bar, that's a fork. So it means that these two things are happening concurrently.
Right. Okay.
And you don't necessarily need to implement the logic this way, right? You could theoretically implement this with like, all concurrent, not multi-threaded, sort of stuff. It's just for visually representing the steps separately. It kind of, I just think that it's easier to show these two things happening separately.
No, I like it. I like how you represented it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wanting to double check my understanding that each one of those thick black bars represents like a concurrent process.
So this is a fork join block. So a vertical fork join. And so, so vertical fork join, and then this is a vertical fork join. So if you see it leaving a fork join, then it's forking. And if you see it coming into a fork join, then it's joining.
Got it.
So as a result of this, the minimum amount of time for an automated public disclosure. I have a problem. I just found a problem in this flow. So, okay. We didn't find an email address. The repository is enabled. We didn't find an email address. We go into here. We find that there's an existing issue, so we use that. The existing issue is closed without a response. So we satisfy here. The emails weren't found, so we've gone down here and we satisfied this or, so we're now here. We come down here, repository doesn't have PMPVR enabled. Oh. No, we create the public pull request here. Okay, that's fine. I was gonna say this thing is gonna keep looping, but then because we have a no, right, and the PMPVR is not enabled, then we just go to public pull request. So theoretically, you could get down to this create a public pull request immediately if they close the issue without response. And there were no emails found. Does that seem?
So is that to say that someone sees the issue and they close it, but they
they don't respond. They don't leave any
message.
messages as a response. They just close it.
So it's like if someone, so we're just going to interpret their action on one side, inaction on the other, because they're not replying. They don't have a way to be contacted.
Yeah. We don't have a way to contact them, and they've just closed the issue.
All right.
Or they had an issue that was open previously, and they just closed it without response.
Yeah.
Or they could have an issue, but it may be less than 35 days since it was last opened. That's what this one is, right?
Yeah.
Fair back.
Does this seem reasonable and nobody in disagreement here?
No, no disagreement.
Yeah, I gave it some thought, but I don't see that as disagreeable.
Hmm. Okay.
And at that point, we don't care about issues that have been open less than 35 days. Because that's the only condition I can think of. So the issue's open, but it's been open less than 35 days.
Yes. I'm just thinking, this vision that in order to turn this into a proper specification, I'm gonna have to turn this into an actual paragraph or multiple paragraphs. It's gonna be kind of annoying.
Yeah,
It could be
it's-
steps. Go ahead.
Oh, when I was first going over this and looking at it, I thought this is so. It's like it takes some doing to analyze it, but it is so clear in ways that human prose would not be.
No, yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, especially this BS, I was like, okay, how the hell do I represent this stupid freaking thing?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be paragraphs, and then paragraphs are like, well, but the comma means something, and whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunate that it's got to be written out instead of just everyone coming back to this and saying, well, let's just revise this.
Right. And I don't mind like including this in the thing. But yeah, yeah. Wait, do we not have a vulnerability disclosure working group meeting tomorrow? Or was it, no, it's normally. Okay, so we're not actually gonna be able to run this by the open source. Okay. So we can't run this by them until next week, tragically. Yeah, Michael Scovetta likes this. Are we in agreement about moving forward with this, the proposed flow?
Yeah, I'm good with it. When you write out the paragraphs, I'm always open to review and help.
I feel like I should try to grab a time and meet with Bob Calloway and Brian Bellendorf, or somebody from Google and somebody from Microsoft. Like, hey, this is what we're thinking. You okay with this before we like try to? Because I don't want to turn this into a paragraph, multiple paragraphs, and then be like, man, no, like.
Yeah, just shoot them. Excuse me. Maybe shoot them an email with yeah, I was about to say his name. Brian Bellendorf.
Yeah, Brian Bellendorf and okay. The other thing that's not covered here that we do need to do that I was going to discuss. So we don't have this report via PMPDR is completely blank. The thing about reporting via PMPDR that we were thinking about was so the problem that we currently have with PMPDR is for GitHub's, which the GitHub's feature is called private vulnerability reporting, or PVR. Hi, Brian. Have you seen this document before? This one? The new one that I did with Michael Scovetta, the Scovetta flow. Okay. Great. We just went through it. Awesome. All right. So
Is that the official name now?
yeah, the Scovetta flow.
I like that one.
So the original flow that I designed for this was we open a PMPDR, which is a pragmatic means of private vulnerability reporting. But so we first go through like opening an issue, waiting for them to respond. If they don't respond within 35 days, then we report via email, or we fall back to email. But the problem with this is that we're waiting 35 days and then waiting 90 days to send an email. And Michael Scavetta's proposal was, why don't we just send the email and open the issue at the same time? So the proposal was switched to, we have a flow over here that's continuously monitoring for if PMPVR is enabled. If it is, we use it. But in the meantime, we check for emails with Michael Scavetta's disclosure check, which he wrote. If the repository has issues enabled and they have emails enabled, then we do both of these sides. But otherwise, if emails are not found or repositories are not enabled, depending upon that, we go down one of these two sides exclusively, but we consider the other side to have been satisfied. But we do them both in parallel, right? So this is the issue side, and this is the email side. But if the emails are not found, then it's automatically satisfied. Emails are not found, this is satisfied. And if issues are not enabled, then this side is satisfied. And then we just assume we move forward down the flow. And then, if the repository at the end of this flow is not enabled PMPVR, then we open a public pull request. Does that make sense? Or have I lost you somewhere in here? You're giving me a look of like, I'm confused, or this doesn't quite make sense.
No, you just gone very fast. And usually before I say, yes, it makes sense, I want to more depth, more closely read it. I mean, I can't even read the labels on the screen I'm looking at here because it's such a,
Let me send you the link. Yeah. Sorry. Because the stupid Zoom.
Nor do I feel like you need my approval right now. Okay. I care much more about the vetting of this by our community. And knowing that you and Scavetta have worked on it, I'm just really going to give it a blank check. But knowing it's been aired here with Noah and Chris, and maybe even posting it to a list and sharing it if you're comfortable with it. But that's going to matter a lot more than my personal opinion.
Right. No, I mean, well,
what I want to understand is what I will care about is where does it have implications for the budget in Alpha Omega and the parts that we are able to automate or make manual. And that sort of thing. But if it aligns with the policy of not wanting to drop too many 0 days on unsuspecting people, and that we're operating in good faith, I'm going to look for validation from others here.
Well, okay. So the one thing that may be of contention here, right? There's a couple things that may be contentious. We send them emails and we don't look at the responses. But we have this ticking clock of 90 days and we're just going to disclose it 90 days. So if they don't have it fixed, in that time, or they haven't enabled PMPVR over here in that time, it will just become public after 90 days. Right.
And we don't monitor the responses because
automation. I mean, they're probably coming from my personal email account with a Google, with some automation, but I don't necessarily
if they respond back, this is not a bug. We should respond back, great, we're going public today.
Yeah, I'll create a public pull request.
I think we should look, I feel like we need to look at those responses. And maybe over time develop an efficient way to route them, but.
Yeah, that's kind of encoded in the, yeah, I'm wondering, is there a way to so if they respond with it's a bug, then we just open a public pull request. I'm the thing that I'm thinking about here is great, that works in small scale, but when you're dealing with the scale of what Trellix did, where they generated 65,000 pull requests, right? At that point, you're dealing with a scale at which this is impractical.
I think the approach is to not over engineer, over optimize the beginning for the use case of thousands per week of CVEs, right? I think what we throttle up, we see what's automatable, we see really do we get 50% response rates or 1% response rates, and adjust with eventually the goal of cranking up the number of scans we're able to do and the number of consume more and more of that pipeline, right? But I think to some degree automation, you don't really know what parts to optimize until that flow starts.
Fair.
Or you make unfair guesses about where to optimize, or uninformed guesses. Uninformed.
Yeah, going
Oh.
on to what Brian had mentioned earlier is that we would have to consider the different types of messages we would get in the different languages too. Because you might actually get responses like from reviewing and our discussion earlier, I don't think we took into consideration of them responding to us and then analyzing the language that they're using so that we know what next steps to do. That would probably be a more manual process, but if we scale this, like if we get thousands of responses in a day, it's going to be hard to properly track that. So I do like the approach of let's scale where we can, but consider what the operational cost or like usage is going to be. Because
I'm trying to encode that into a process document that's like,
yeah, we probably just have to be like a very generic like monitoring results or monitoring like issues. Where if it doesn't fall in those two cases, maybe we get kind of like an alert to like, hey, check out this pull request or something.
I mean, to some degree, steps in this process that involve humans, but your hope is that eventually you can replace that human with automation, with a rule, with a signal with a rule, right? That you can automate around.
I mean, look at the article, they put like an optional, like you can you can optionally, if the person, like if they respond with it's not a bug, it's a it's not a vulnerability, it's a bug. We can put like optionally, you are willing, you can jump this forward, and then but you don't have to implement that. You can just wait 90 days. Like that's still within spec. Okay. All right, let's do that then. The other thing that crossed my mind that may be controversial is, let's say that we can't find any emails to report with. They have issues enabled. So emails are not found. Repositories are enabled. So we're only going to do it run down this flow. Let's say we've already opened an existing issue requesting that PM PVR be enabled. Then we use the existing issue, which was created previously from a previous run. Let's assume that issue was closed without a response or closed by a stale dot, right? Then, as stated, if this issue that we requested PM PVR be enabled from a previous report is still either was just closed or closed by stale bot, then we go down here and we just jump immediately to creating a public pull request. So we go directly from PM PVR is not enabled to creating a public pull request because they closed the last issue that we had, or requesting a disclosure channel be opened to us, and because we can't find an email to disclose to.
I think it is very defensible that if a project closes an issue that you've reported, whether as won't fix or not, and there's no other communication from them, then you can go straight to publishing the bug.
Okay. Yeah, got a thumb up from Josh. Hi, Josh. Oh, don't forget to put your what's it called in the Google Doc, the I was here.
Tenants.
Yes.
Kilroy was here. Okay, what are some other potential edge cases or contentious issues, or where are we dialing up the aggressiveness the right way? Dialing up the ambition without being too aggressive, I should say.
Yeah. So the shortest time beyond no response would be 35 days here, where we can't find an email, they don't respond to the issue. That'd be 35 days. And they have enabled PM PVR. So that's this next most aggressive time frame. The third most aggressive time frame is 90 days, where we've sent the issue, or we sent the email, and there's 90 days. Simultaneously, this whole flow over here is continuously running that says if the vulnerability is fixed, then we're done. If 90 days have elapsed since the process began, then we open a public pull request. If the public PR, if a public pull request has been opened, then we're done because it happened from this other flow that occurred. If the repository enables PMPVR, then we use it. So that's just another continuous loop going on over on the other side. So the maximum we'd be waiting is 90 days. The minimum that we'd be waiting is no time at all, because they've closed the issue previously from us having run this campaign, a campaign against this repository.
I still think that's right.
Okay.
You know what, because I think there's a bit of selling of this plan that we'll need to do publicly, or at least explaining it in lay terms for people who find following a flowchart hard, which isn't any of us on this call, but would be, you know, people getting thrust with one of these things out of the blue, or a journalist or something, would be perhaps some sort of prose that says, here's some happy paths, and here's how we handle the not happy paths, right, through this system. And this is something we can create after this is finalized, but just to help the public understand the duty of care we're taking.
Yeah, some like example. Yeah, so because I think that this needs to be turned into a paragraph that describes it, but I think that encoding this flow in the document is also not a bad thing.
This is a whole white paper's worth of flow. I'm saying dumb it down a little bit.
Yeah. Provide some examples.
Story of, we ran this, we found a bug in Foobar, and we filed an issue, private issue, but it was closed immediately. So we then said, great, it's okay for us to publish it. Just like a few of these kind of pathways that demonstrate for people how, in each case, we're balancing these different priorities appropriately. And I'm not saying you have to create those, Jonathan, by the way. You understand this best, but I think this is something that the project will have to own as part of the documentation for what we've created.
Right. I am curious. So one of the things that we're also not capturing here is what happens if issues are enabled, or issues are or are not enabled, right? But we go to this flow, we have emails found, but we've sent emails to the same set of maintainers in the past and gotten no response. Do we want to handle something here where we say, like, we previously received no response, or do we give them the benefit of the doubt every time, where we always,
benefit of the doubt? Maybe they learned their lesson the first time. Maybe the set of maintainers is slightly different. I think you give them the benefit of the doubt. I see Yotam has his hand up, has his thumbs up on that. Agrees with that.
So we're still waiting those 90 days. Okay. Okay, so then this flow will require some sort of state management around, like, monitoring, like how time frames and stuff like that, right? Like, we sent an email at this date and it's been X period of time, right? Yeah.
And some reporting on that, so that internally we're looking and we see, okay, next week, here's the set of 20 projects that we're going to put some CVEs out about unless we hear from them.
I'm less inclined to, so I know that you, Michael Scavetta, and everybody loves the term CVE I'm less inclined to, unless we've done unless we've explicitly audited and done the vetting of, yes, this is truly a vulnerability. MITRE doesn't love CVEs that are just coming from automated systems. They want every single CVE to have been vetted in some capacity. We don't have those same constraints for the Global Security Database, GSD, which is the thing that Josh Bressers Josh Berker and those guys are working on. So I would say
we're update to the NVD, right?
that doesn't get those GSD or the global security database IDs do not go into the NVD.
But that's kind of an update. I'm saying that's like a next gen NVD or something. Cool.
It's
GSD.
CVE light, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have the
you're right.
infrastructure around it. Yeah,
We don't have to focus on CVEs. My hope would be if we come up with bugs that actually qualify based on their CVSS, their severity score, that we decide how to sufficiently automate and/or mechanical Turk and/or find volunteers and/or do whatever is required. Maybe this is a conversation we have with MITRE. What's the right way for us to turn this bundle of 100 or 1,000 high, mid severity, qualifyingly severity high enough bugs to get them into the CVE system? Or are you telling us CVE consumers don't care about these kinds of things, right? Like, I think there'll be some middle ground, and if we have to pick up the phone and talk to MITRE about the right way to do it, that's an easy thing.
Yeah.
And I think
you're right. Our metric should not necessarily be CVEs, but be total vulnerabilities found that we were able to move through the process.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Yes.
Go ahead. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So just and I think as part of this discussion, we should also consider maybe GHSA, because I think because we're talking about open source, it's kind of best entwined into GitHub, and you have the security tab, and whenever you have a GHSA for a project, automatically will appear there, and that is also something that can be later pushed through NVD and get a CVE. I assume easily, more like in a more straightforward way than from the GSD, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so the problem with GHSAs is that so anybody can get a GHSA, right? GitHub won't issue a CVE number as the CNA unless the maintainer requests it. So researchers, if you are a researcher and you believe that there's a CVE, there's a vulnerability here, they will not assign you CVE number just based upon the researcher's perspective. As a corollary to that, if you open a PDR, right, and report the vulnerability to the maintainer, and the maintainer is non-responsive, they have made the line on the stand. They do not want to operate as an arbitrator in those cases. So what I have done is a little different. I have the way that I've done things is, instead of getting the security, or most of the time when you're doing disclosure, the maintainer is the one that owns the GSD, or sorry, the GHSA, the GitHub Security Advisory. The way that I do things is a little differently. I have a public repository where I have my security research, and I have been disclosing here. And so these are not published from where the repository is, because I can't force a maintainer to publish something. I do so here, where I put all the details about the vulnerability and publicly disclose it, and then I get a CVE number and assign, put it on here. But that means that I'm owning the disclosure process, and it's not tied to the source code anymore. It's tied to my own repository. This is how Google Project Zero has started doing this for open source for vulnerabilities. It's really not ideal, but it's a way to feed into the GHSA system, even though you're the maintainer's not willing to work with you, or whatever reason.
Yeah. So I agree, it's not ideal, but from the reasons you just mentioned, maybe we should consider it as well, like to have like one project that is for the fixed automation, and then all of the GHSAs will be open from there, and then we'll remain in control of whether we want to pursue for CV, and then it's also all in one place. Anyway, I don't know like what's the ideal solution, but I think it's definitely something that we should consider when we have the discussion regarding GSD or alternatives.
Yes. So the proposal that I have, that I haven't written. So what I'm going to propose is we have this create private vulnerability thing, this create private pull request via PMPVR.
Mhm.
Ideally, what would happen here is you open the PMPVR, right? Report the vulnerability. This flow is not I've not created this flow. I will create this flow, but you create the PMPVR to report the vulnerability. And then you wait, right? And if the maintainer is unresponsive, then you take if they're unresponsive, you give them 90 days. If they're unresponsive, you take that PMPVR and you create a public pull request from it. And then you also take that PMPVR and you publish your own disclosure for it. Right. And so because you can't force the maintainer, GitHub won't let you force that thing to get disclosed that you opened. You take everything out of that and put it somewhere else and then disclose that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
This might be a foolish question, but are there tools that consume data from CVEs and try to figure out what project they attach to, and then those tools would not find that reference because it's CVEs reported against your personal repos? There's some fix for that?
So kind of. I've talked to Madison Oliver about this. It's a little interesting. If you publish a GHSA and you have included a link to it in your CVE request, right? GitHub gets the CVE request instead of coming in from there, it's been given by a maintainer. It then comes in through their CVE request flow where they're seeing it, but they'll see the link to the GHSA. And usually for that GHSA, I've filled in all the details of like what packages impact, stuff like that. GitHub's database, the GitHub Security Advisory database, is one of the few databases, I think it's the only database that is Creative Commons licensed that has data in a structured format. SNCC's database does not have that characteristic. There's a bunch of other ones that don't. So I try to provide that information to make it easy for whoever is consuming that information to consume it in a structured format because there's no one else that does that, right? I don't know if they treat these reports like what I do any different. I don't know if GitHub like is pulling it as the API or if they're just looking at the thing that I wrote up and then copying and pasting the fields over into their own thing because they have a team of people that is doing this stuff. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I think it's worth exploring with them maybe. And I think another advantage is if it does get fed into their pool of GHSAs, then it will also appear in OSV because OSV contains all of the GitHub security advisories as well.
Yeah, there's another the other thing that's popping. So NVD also publishes this CPE. So this CPE is supposed to be, it's like ideally an identifier for a piece of software, and it doesn't map very well to Perls,
Yeah.
right? Like there's but there is an effort to map from like this CVE to what packages or what thing is impacted. It's just very imperfect, and NVD doesn't supply these in a consistent way.
Yeah.
Doodle doodle doodle. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, I think that my plan next is to go implement this thing, which actually should be pretty straightforward. It's mostly going to be like, wait 90 days. Has it been open for more than 90 days? No, then make it public, or pull all the data out and make it public. And then also some collaboration with the maintainer. Because like ideally this will be that part will be a collaborative effort, hopefully, if possible. Yeah. Yeah, any questions, concerns, other things about this proposal or this flow, The one annoying thing that I have about this part is that we may not be able to automate comments on PMPVRs because I don't know if GitHub will support that. So yeah.
I don't have much more to add, or at least not that we'll only take 2 minutes, but I think this is probably mature enough to consider socializing a bit more widely within the OpenSSF, like to the full, like as an email or to the full vulnerability working group disclosure, or to possibly even the TAC or general or something like that. But just consider gradually opening it up a bit more. And I think asking for help from other people by playing out various scenarios and how they run through this process would be a good way to kind of red team it, so to speak. Probe it for weaknesses or edge cases where it's doesn't lead to great outcomes. It does also feel like this recent conversation about how to report the vulnerability suggests it needs its own, unless it's here and I'm not seeing it because again I can't see the labels. Part of the workflow that is a part of our conversation with folks like GitHub around GHSAs and maybe even eventually MITRE. So, you dropped a link to.
I linked to it earlier. I thought you didn't realize you couldn't see it again. Still, yeah.
I do have the link. I'm just on a laptop, and like being able to see this and see all of you and see the conversation at the same time. I don't have my full immersive cockpit kind of like set up right now. So apologies for that. But I also just want to emphasize again, like, bring me your edge cases, bring me your, where are we calibrating too aggressive or not aggressive enough? What I suck at is completeness. So I'm going to depend upon others to really be helpful there. And then secondly, where does it create big expense for us or risk for us as Alpha Omega as a project? And I think the final comment is if we're okay with an iterative approach and kind of optimizing the bottlenecks as we go, and occasionally maybe we volunteer / mechanical Turk it, then I think we'll be able to fix the hotspots that emerge over time.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Yesenia dropped, thankfully, a link. We are trying to move this meeting because it doesn't work for a lot of people. If you've not yet filled out the doodle for when meetings work great for you, that'd be great. I'm gonna try to hopefully go sailing, at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays moving forward. So I've blocked off my 4 to 5 so that I can drive to the sailing place that I do. So, but yeah, let's try to find a spot that works for everybody for the summer. Yeah, thank you all for coming and being a part of this freaking mayhem of trying to figure out how to do this right, because it's it's important and we're going to actually operationalize this stuff, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that is thinking about it. So yeah. Okay. I'm also going to try to shop this to the Apache Software Foundation. They have an email chain that's focused on security, and I've pissed off a couple of those maintainers with this process in the past, and so I want to invite them to come participate in this conversation now that we have something that's cohesive instead of like a bunch of stupid bouncing off walls. And
if you want, David Nally is the president, and he's also at Amazon, and he's a big supporter of Alpha Omega and what we're doing here. Might be a good person to start with. I know Mark Cox has also been very helpful with OpenSSF early on, but rather than going too broad, I suggest maybe starting with David.
Because the people that are going to be experiencing this are the people that are actually like the maintainers, the software maintainers, and some of them have been not so thrilled. So I want to give them the opportunity to voice their concerns.
Be a part of the process.
Be a part of the solution, but not. I didn't want to do that at the beginning because I wanted to have something in front of them to show them instead of just
the instinct to want to engage the hardest to win over crowd is admirable. And I'm just thinking maybe in prep for that, being able to say, here's some other accolades for it or other kind of about people who understand it and vouch for it might make that problem.
Interesting. That political angle that I hadn't thought of. Okay, that's fair.
Okay. I want to jump right to the red team, and I admire that.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Okay. Let's talk more later. I got to jump.
All right. Cool. Talk to you later. All. Bye.
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 Tally ho.